everybody, welcome back. We are wrestling the book of Esther. This is a Bible study on Sunday. We're having a good time. We're going to have a great time. We're going to talk about a dime. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about Persia, and which included Pakistani warlords and Indian call centers. We're going to get it all in there in 10 chapters of Esther. So, welcome. Hi, everybody. Hi. Say hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Good evening.
I gotta say, it's been a long time since I've been through the book of Esther. I've read it a few times, but it's been years and years ago that I went through that one. So I'm a little rusty. But when you mentioned that the first queen just wasn't really interested, I guess, couldn't follow orders, didn't want to. That's almost reminiscent to today's feminist movement. The feminists, we were right up there. Oh, it's just a king. I don't care. I don't need no man. I don't.
Well,
Edward, she was a liberated woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being liberated, but we still have to, maybe follow some common protocols as society would dictate to us. But no, not her. She was just too good, I guess. So here we find ourselves in the book.
Well, do you want to listen to chapter 1 and then we'll go from there?
Oh, you got that? Yeah, of course, sure.
All right, let's go.
Esther 1. The King's Banquet. These events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. At that time, Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted 180 days, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. When it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people from the greatest to the least who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords and purple ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine reflecting the king's generosity. By edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Queen Vashti deposed. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman.
She was a dime show.
But when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious.
Imagine that.
With anger, he consulted with his wise advisors, who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. The names of these men were Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, 7 nobles of Persia and Media. They met with the king regularly and held the highest positions in the empire. What must be done to Queen Vashti? The king demanded. What penalty does the law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders, properly sent through his eunuchs? Memucan answered the king and his nobles. Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king. Before this day is out, the wives of all the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear what the queen did and will start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger.
Too late.
So if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. It should order that Queen Vashti be forever banished from the presence of King Xerxes, and that the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. When this decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. The king and his nobles thought this made good sense. So he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his own home and should say whatever he pleases.
So obviously there's a lot of fun stuff in there. So basically he sent out an Instagram post to the media
Right.
telling men are allowed to be men and they will be men.
affirming the patriarchy. That's exactly what he did. Yeah.
It was affirming the patriarchy. And
I know. No, that's put it in modern language. That's what he did.
Reaffirming.
Well, I mean, fair enough. I mean, obviously,
if you look at it all right, so he's got this dime of a queen. She's a 10. Dude, bros, a 10. A 10 that won't listen to you.
9.5, because the 10's about to come on the scene.
Well, good point. But so the 9.5, the 10, whatever, isn't listening to you. And according to law, you could just banish the 10. So, well, you're not needed anymore. You are banished from my existence.
Well, when you're the queen, it's kind of hard to do that. But
no. Edward, we're not talking about Great Britain.
Right.
We're talking about a sultan. Okay, there's no pope that needs to bless this or anything like that. The king is the king. All right,
that is true. Yeah, I was going to say though, but to save face, dignity, and respect from the other people that may be following her, you just can't chop her off her head. There would be some resentment, I would think. So, but yes, the king is the king. That's been made plain through all these stories of the Bible, that the power they hold. And besides that, Persia is a much bigger country than England was and is today.
And don't underestimate it. Did you hear from India to Ethiopia? I mean, that's Greater Israel.
Yeah, it's a big stretch.
At least that's what BB would like, right?
Don't think your foreshadowing isn't going to get held accountable, because the Jews come into this very much so.
Of course they do. Is there a story where they don't? Anyway, all right.
That's why we have the Bible. It's all about the Jews. It was written for the Jews. The Old Testament
and about them, and it was written about truth.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that moment, I think.
Yes.
Not that. Who tells? That's
or should I say truths? I mean, these aren't just fables. These aren't fables. This is life wisdom.
It is. It's exactly right. Told out in real life stories.
And when you hear, and one last thing before I let Sean continue, when you hear the Israelis struggling in the desert in Sinai for 40 years, and Sean's theory, and I pretty much agree with it, is that it takes 2 generations to purge the behaviors that they had developed in Egypt and otherwise, as slaves, that needed to be gone before they could enter the promised land. I think that makes perfect sense. But the stuff that they were going through, sounds mysteriously like the stuff we're going through today, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, could you not
True.
see $9 billion in aid to the Philistines? You know, in daycare centers, and if there was some sort of grift where somebody could print some drachmas or whatever the hell, and push them over there, you think those folks in the Sinai Desert wouldn't have engaged in that?
Well,
Human beings do not change morally.
Well,
oh, no,
I,
no,
I
no.
want
Always,
to. I want
always.
to first to everybody. I opened up the chat rooms everywhere. If you want to chat with us or comments as we go through the Book of Esther, or if we go on side quests like JC just did. But I also want to
Yeah,
get Paul.
imagine
Do you
that.
have on the first chapter, Esther
We're so bad.
1? Paul, do you have any comment or something you want to throw in there?
Yeah, first of all, I will say when they talk about India to the Kush, which is modern day Ethiopia, a lot of people don't realize the size of Israel. It was 3 or 4 times larger than modern day Israel. It went way up through Jordan and way down south past Egypt and way out west. As for Vishti's behavior for that time, that was
I was going to.
unforgivable. It was really unforgivable for
Yeah.
her to act that way in that era. And my view is that it was on purpose to try to edge out some kind of control of the king, or to let people know that he wasn't the boss of her, or some kind of thing like that, So
So in other words, human beings don't change very much, right?
They were just
that's
go-
right.
then
No,
somebody
honestly, honestly, I think that first chapter really sums up that
Yeah.
we haven't changed much, and we've all dealt
Oh,
with somebody very much like that in our life, right?
that goes right back to the garden.
married one of them. To be honest about it, yeah.
Yeah, you go back to the Garden of Eden, the same thing occurred there, trying to get on top, be on top, not with Adam, but doing it all behind everybody's back, behind Adam's back, behind our father's back, behind just, her and, the other half there, they're coaxing her on. Yeah, we should be like, anyways, go back. Go on.
Well, do you guys? I mean, if you got more to comment here, we'll take whatever time we need. If we have to go into a second or third podcast on this weeks down the road, but if not, we'll move into. I'll just go ahead and play the audio of chapter 2.
Well, you know what? The dimensions of Israel are already laid out in the Bible as far as its dimensions of where they go from the River Jordan to, here and there. It's already all marked out, the sides of it, that is going to be their land. But Persia was a huge country that engulfed, all the lands in between, Persia, all the way down to what they call the people, the horses, Armenia, and the other one, then Israel. It was a huge swath of land. It was a huge empire.
And it was to give a time frame. It started pre-Roman, and then the Romans came about, and there was a bunch of clashing between the two of those nations, right?
That was before the Greeks even came.
The Greeks,
Alexander the Great. Before him even. So
you're talking like 300 BC, I think. Or anyone want to run that through a Grok search for us?
I'll say around 300.
Too many windows open to do a Grok search.
That's about right, I would suppose. Because Rome was.
Just out of curiosity, where we come up with the postage stamp dimensions of today's Israel?
Where did we?
Yeah,
the line was drawn in 1947, JC.
By the UN, right?
No, in England.
Well, not the UN. There was no
England.
UN.
My buddies in Great Britain did that.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a period of time when Israel was a British colony. All things lead back to Great Britain.
Oh, good God. Okay. I learned something tonight. Okay.
Can Can we not get rid of those guys once and for all? What are you Americans doing up there anyways? You're supposed to get them out a long time ago.
Hey, you know what? Go listen to
Hey,
Monday's.
you're the colony. All
Go
right, anyway.
listen. Go listen to last Monday's podcast. We walk you through the entire thing that Trump is doing to dismantle the British Empire.
Yeah.
About time.
It's not for this podcast. We're
No,
wrestling
no.
with Esther.
Couldn't resist.
By the way,
45
wrestling with
BCE.
Esther, I probably would have liked to wrestle with her. She sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah.
When you mentioned when I saw that title, I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Let's. All right.
Sean, it was 465 BCE.
465. Thank you,
465.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to chapter 2.
Searching for a queen.
Esther becomes queen. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendant suggested, "Let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti." This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. At that time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who, with King Jehoiakim of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai's care. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther
Yeah.
never told anyone
Like a grooming gang. Yeah, all right.
because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Every day, Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her.
Oh, man.
Before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments. 6 months with oil of myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Shaashgaz, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. To celebrate the occasion, he gave a great banquet in Esther's honor for all his nobles and officials, declaring a public holiday for the provinces and giving generous gifts to everyone. Even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's directions, just as she did when she lived in his home. Mordecai's loyalty to the king. One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. This was all recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign.
So, a couple of things I think we should just explain for explaining's sake. I would think that a lot of people might know these two terms, eunuch and concubine, but there's going to
Yeah.
be people that don't know what those terms are.
Okay.
Eunuch being a castrated male, concubine being a prostitute.
Nah,
Yes.
that's an unfair. No, that's not prostitute.
Well, tell me what is a
You're
concubine?
you're only with the king. That's it. No one else. So you're not prostituting yourself out to everybody. You're just assigned to one person, the king. That's it. You stay there. So it's not really a prostitution, as you worded it. That's one for all. But anyways, and all for one.
Never. Just to clarify, is there payment?
Well, you get to stay with the king and everything that the king
And he
supplies.
pays for everything, right?
Yeah. So
You're not married, right?
not in that sense. No, you're not.
Okay.
It's
All
a
right, just
contractual. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're saying.
Oh, I watched this movie
really.
once with Richard Gere and he
Julia
found
Roberts.
this redhead Julia Roberts, and he
Yeah.
had her for an entire week. She had no other men, just him.
Just him.
What would you define that as? And he paid for
prostitute.
everything.
It's only a week though. It's just a prostitute. She was still available to everyone.
So
One for all.
So the difference between a prostitute and a concubine is duration.
Well, it's a lifetime commitment. Really, you're not getting out of that.
Our Bible studies are lit. I don't know why people aren't reposting this and sharing it and
Paul,
DMing their friends.
I want to know what your pastor thinks about this.
Well, let's write in. We need an answer to this, Paul. What do you think?
So my idea of a concubine is a woman who's faithful to one man without being married to that man and being kept by that man.
Okay.
And everybody knows about it. They
With
might
all
even
your-
have children together. Yes.
So concubines are exclusive.
Yeah, concubines are exclusive.
Okay.
That's my.
All right.
But these
Prostitutes are rent their rooms by the hour.
So
Right.
like swans,
Okay, yeah.
so like swans, they mate for life.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
All right. That's worth clarifying.
Now that everyone's got that out of their system.
Yeah, and I mean eunuchs. I mean that's kind of you won't find any eunuchs on this show. You'll have to go to MS Now.
Well, all right, but
Yeah.
could somebody get into the distrust so much so of the sinful human male that rulers like kings had to eunuch their male servants?
And can I tie this into something that has to do with Western civilization? Just asking permission.
Yeah, sure.
Where do these eunuchs come from? They came from Africa. Okay?
All right.
They came from Africa because they were the slaves that weren't sold to the Western world. They were the slaves that were sold into the East and into the Middle East. And they were castrated and used as eunuchs in sultans and royal courts and things like that because the last thing they wanted those folks to do was to marry and reproduce and threaten the power structure of the existing civilization. That is the story. That is why you don't find, even though there were more African slaves sold into the Middle East than to the Western world, you have no African minority communities in the Middle East whatsoever. They don't exist because they weren't able to reproduce. And being a eunuch in a sultan's court was part of that.
King Solomon had like 300 and something concubines, so it's just not they had one or two.
Right.
Some of these kings had so many. And remember, Ethiopia is still part of Africa, and Moses' wife was an Ethiopian, black, Zipporah.
Yeah.
So it
Well, he
goes
had
back
some,
to a lot of history that comes out of that area, not just as one specific story, but even back, well, hundreds of years before that.
didn't he have 750 wives to pick from?
You're talking King Solomon?
Yeah.
I forget how many he had now. Was it 300 and something wives and 600 concubines? Maybe that was the math. I can't remember. Just under 1,000 seems to be right to me. But yeah, he was not bored. Well, he did get bored, as a matter of fact. He did get bored. But let's not go into King Solomon's life.
Well, yeah, we're going to get all off track too, because then we
No. But that's one of the
the downfall of King David was him coveting an ex-wife.
Right.
It's not.
But the one thing that always confuses me is that King Solomon prayed for wisdom and he ended up with 1,000 women. Okay, so I mean, okay, I mean, you results may vary.
Well, widely. Paul, I know we're going off the rails. Which
I know Paul's looking at us like we're retards. I know.
So we did chapter 2. Esther is introduced. There's a hint in there towards the end of chapter 2 that says she kept her beliefs or basically her religion silent from the king, which is important because she's Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Which we'll get into now. But obviously in Persia, Persia's not a Jewish state at the time. Jews are regularly persecuted, much like Iran persecutes anybody that's not Muslim, which is one of the links I wanted to try together. But any thoughts, Paul, on chapter 2?
Yeah, it leaves out a part in chapter 2 where Mordecai's down at the gate on duty, and 2 eunuchs come down there and become infuriated and plan an assassination of the king, and Mordecai turns them in and therefore saves the king's life. That was the only omission that I saw, but as far as the other parts of chapter 2 with the concubines and that listen, she, the at the end of the day, she was beautiful. They've picked her out. They selected her. She was going to be next to the king. She was going to draw favor with the king, become one of his concubines, but then later on, she'd be crowned as queen.
He liked her so much. Come on, every guy in the history of history, right? I'm going to queen that girl.
Actually, it was her personality. She had an outstanding personality.
Yes.
Yeah, she had that too. I'm just kidding.
That was the result of those 12 months of beauty treatments.
Yes.
Yep. That's the better attitude.
And you know what? Women still go to the salon for those treatments.
Absolutely. I can testify they do.
Yeah, of course.
You guys want to fire up another chapter? We still got plenty of time on the clock.
Well, yeah, let's do 3.
Okay.
Let's roll.
3 is interesting.
3.
Three.
Haman's plot against the Jews. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" They spoke to him day after day, but still he refused to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. So in the month of April,
Time out.
Paul, go
Time
ahead.
out, Sean.
Paul, go ahead.
Flag on the plate.
Yeah, didn't when what the narrator is talking about is when Mordecai took off all his clothes and put on sackcloth and went and sat by the gate, and he couldn't go into the kingdom because you're not allowed to go into the kingdom with wearing sackcloth. So as a kind of a silent protest, Mordecai went down there with his sackcloth on and just sat by the gate. And that's what I remember now, that's what the eunuchs were infuriated about, is when they went down to the gate and saw Mordecai there in his sackcloth.
So in sackcloth, is that referring to dressed as a traditional Jew?
Yeah, as a traditional Jew and a poor.
In mourning.
Yeah.
In mourning, Edward. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just stunned. I'm just stunned the eunuchs found the testosterone to get all enraged about just about anything, right?
A steer will still kill you, even if it's not a bull.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
If we don't turn it into a T-bone, right? Yeah, right.
It'll still kill you. Let's play a little more. This is where it's getting fun.
12th year of King
Right.
Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action. And the day selected was March 7th, nearly a year later. Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, "There is a certain race of people scattered through all the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. If it please the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury." The king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. The king said, "The money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit." So on April 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned and a decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, and the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. Dispatches were sent by swift messengers into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. A copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all peoples so that they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. At the king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers, and it was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. Then the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa fell into confusion. 4.
Oh, hold on.
Mordecai
let's talk about 3. Hold on, Bible app or Bible website. Hold on.
They keep saying the king's name. He says, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Exerxes. Why does he pronounce it the way he does?
Well, I
Exerxes.
brought up, here's the issue, just for everybody listening, and I saw, unfortunately, we lost our friends on YouTube. We had 2 of them. I hope they come back. I wanted to do the. I
I
wanted to
thought
do
maybe
the.
one of them was Edward Subscriber on
I
YouTube,
want.
right?
I wanted to
Yeah.
do the. I wanted to do the King James version, but you really have to be linguistically talented to be able to grasp what the King James version says. So I went to something obviously more modern, which is where Paul is pointing out discrepancies between the LIV or NIV. I can't remember which one I picked, and the real Bible, the King James Bible. Just so we're clear, what we're hearing is not the King James
Right.
version.
Yeah.
I can't blame Paul. I mean, there people. It's been called the St. James Bible. You know that.
It's
No.
well, no, it. Well, I believe it to be the most accurate retelling. I was just, and
Exactly.
maybe I made a mistake in thinking that
No, you
if
didn't.
if maybe a million people watch this, over the next year, that they would be taught by
That's
American schools to understand the actual linguistics of the King James Bible.
you think that's a long shot in American schools?
I do, I do, sadly.
Okay. I think you're probably right.
So that's why I went with the way I went. We could always change it up when we do more of this. But anyway, so three, right? Book three. Paul, where do you want to go with this?
Well, the fact that he went to the king and he said, "Look, I've discovered a group of people that live outside of your jurisdiction, basically, and they march to their own drummer, they do their own thing, they do not comply, and they do not recognize the kingdom." That's basically what he said. And he said, "For those reasons, I think they should all be destroyed."
Mm-hmm.
And the king said, "Get after it, my boy.
Do
Here's
it.
my signet ring."
Well, they weren't that much different than the rest of Persia. There's just some mind. He made a mountain of molehills and said they don't do anything the same.
Right.
They did. They just didn't want to bow down because Christians don't bow down to anybody or Jews but God.
Edward, these weren't Christians; these were
Right.
Jews.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Jews, I'll say Jews, they just don't bow down and worship kings or government. They worship God and Him only. So that was a big difference that, of course, they're not going to like if you're, on that side of things. The Jewish side of things, of course, you're going to think that's just normal and natural because that's you. That's your culture.
Yeah.
The voice at the burning bush, the great "I am who I am," is the God of all.
Yeah.
Yahweh.
And Yahweh. If you're going to worship Him, it makes no sense to throw virgins and women in volcanoes or children or all the rest of that. It makes no sense to do that because the Hebrew Bible says, "Love your neighbor," and said that in the midst of the same sort of squalor in the world that we're seeing right now. That's when it was written. That's what it said.
Who
Okay,
is your neighbor? That's a question that we
love your
really.
neighbor. That's exactly right.
Who is who is your neighbor? Is that the Somalis?
Who is your neighbor? Well,
Actually,
I don't consider the Somalis to be my neighbor because they live over there, unless someone sends them to live next door to me. Now, is that incoherent? I mean, that's kind of a bright line to today's discussion. But my point is this: if 90% of them are on public assistance, and the remittances are going back to fund terrorists in their home village, I'm worried about what influence sent them here in the first place.
that
I know
Bible
that
story.
that's not a Bible study, but you said the word Somali, and it's obviously in the news.
So yeah, no, obviously I wanted to tie that in there, but I'm also looking at chapter 3 and going, so the Jews were literally the king's neighbor, but somebody in his cabinet, right, with high authority, who didn't like the Jews, said, "Hey, king, we should kill them all of
Remember,
them."
remember though, he said knowing their nationality would not be enough, so they had to accuse them of something else, and that was the bowing down thing. And we see that time and time again. We get to the book of Daniel, the exact same thing happens again. The exact thing happens with Nebuchadnezzar, the statue, and the bowing down to the statues, and the Jews would, well, the four nobles would not do that. And this is the same thing always occurring over and over again in the Bible, where Christians or Jews just do not do that. That's not us. We don't worship governments, and that's why the world wants to kill us all the time, because they can't control us because we don't worship them. So our kingdom's coming. We don't have a kingdom here. We're waiting for us to land to come down, and everybody says, "Well, Christians have this kingdom or kingdomdom or Christendom." No, there is no such thing as Christendom. Our kingdom is not here. We don't recognize that.
Our rights come from God and not from government.
Correct. Yeah, and no one wants to realize that, because it's again.
No, Edward, no one in government wants to realize that, and that hasn't changed at all. Okay.
Correct. No, that's so true.
They're even bold enough now that Tim Kaine will sit there in the halls of Congress and say, "I would believe something so silly like that."
Yeah.
How about Thomas Jefferson? He believed that. Is he an idiot? Compared to Tim Kaine? Are you kidding? I mean, you're both from Virginia, but one of you is a eunuch.
Man, somebody clip that up and post that right now, like everywhere.
Wasn't Tim Kaine? Wasn't he? What's her name's running mate?
Hillary's running mate. Yes, he was.
Oh my God, that guy, wasn't he? Well,
he'd have been perfect. I mean, he was the prior to Tim Walz, he was the craziest idiot ever picked for vice president. But brother, we can't touch the retard.
No,
there's no way.
Stop driving by and call him a retard.
Well, what's interesting is because we could laugh about all this, but they were all sitting around a table drinking wine and eating lamb steak, laughing about the same things.
I know.
500 BC, because people don't change.
They don't change.
Well, our fallen nature doesn't change. That's true.
The Bible says you're supposed to live a Christ-like life. And it wasn't Christ-like back then. It's not Christ-like now.
No.
Correct.
No, and Paul, I know we have a new covenant now, but that doesn't mean license to go and oppose ICE because you're worried about your neighbor. I mean, that's your interpretation of theology, and no one has given you license to interfere with the government and deportation of aliens in the name of God.
You remind me, I need to look up, we need to get into one of our Bible studies where God commands you to respect your government. Side conversation. Go ahead, JC.
No, but I mean, that's the whole two kingdoms thing. Give to Caesar what is Caesar. Jesus himself said it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we could apply it today. Give to Homan what is Homan's. That's his job, And why in the world are you getting your self-fulfillment out of standing in front of
Well, no, hold on. Because if you look at modern day Western life, right, and the way the progressive socialists or the communists or the Nazis, however you want to put it, they're all the same.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. Hold on. But first, they don't believe there is a God of any kind, whether it's the Muslim God or the Christian God or the God of a golden cow or anything else. And then after that, they want to slam people who want to learn about the Bible and say things. Just take a clip, a couple of words. Love thy neighbor. And I'm going to go to them. I really want to know this question. What do you mean by neighbor? What if I put them in your house next to yours?
Right. Or the room downstairs. Better
yes.
Yet. Yeah.
And does love thy neighbor mean to import the third world into your government, God-approved empire,
Wait a
America.
minute. We do have rules and regulations. You just can't let everybody in your country and have no walls, because if you have no walls, you have no country, and that's not what that means by
JC
your
just
neighbor.
JC just he got it. He heard what I you heard
I'm
what
just
I said,
saying.
JC, right?
When you,
God-approved empire.
of course, we already.
Romans 13:1-2. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that for which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted.
Right.
Thank you, Paul.
Right.
And
If you read,
so,
if you read
with your
further,
crazy white liberal female cousin or aunt is out there protesting the government, hold on, everyone's going to go, wait, what about Iran? Hold on.
I wasn't going to mention that.
I'm talking about in the West.
Yeah.
They're rebelling against their government that God put in charge.
Well, wait a second now, because that's in charge of the carrying out the same rules and regulations we already established. But once you start going and breaking those and overcoming the laws of the land from our father, that's when you don't have to follow the government. If you're starting to say, okay, people, start murdering your neighbor, well, that's crossing the line to our laws that have been established by our father, so we don't follow government in that case. Do you know what I mean? You don't follow government just for the sake of following them. You still have our father's laws to follow. Primarily, first and foremost, the government comes after that. If they cross over our father's law, you don't have to follow them. That's not true.
So what I take out of what Paul just read, though, is that there's established law in the empire of the United States. It is an empire. Let's just be clear about that, and I'm okay with that. But there's laws that are established, and we believe in the founders that wrote the laws. Some of the amendments are a little bunk. Maybe we should readdress them. We have ways to do that lawfully.
Supposedly.
To do that.
Yeah.
But it's when you go out and you say, I'm going to resist. I am the resistance. I am going to stand in front of police cars or ambulances. That would be, again, that would be against God's will.
Right. And sometimes you'll catch a 9mm in the face for that.
Yeah, you might.
3 times.
And then one from the side. Yeah.
A side order of lead, please.
Just to be sure. Yeah.
Not fun to even talk about, but
once again, I have to remark that that agent showed the trigger discipline of Kyle Rittenhouse. That really was amazing.
Far better.
Just amazing.
All
right. So
one more comment before you go on to the next chapter, and that is talking about loving your neighbor and who is your neighbor and stuff like that. You're supposed to be that neighbor, by the way. Don't look at the other 3 guys that pass by. You are supposed to find yourself as the neighbor in that story, and that's what everybody just seems to gloss over. And number 2, loving your neighbor is not as important as that new covenant law that our Lord gave us. Love your enemy. What? Who can do that? Now that is, they never had that in the Old Testament, but the New Testament, love your enemies. That's a tough one. Not many are going to want to do.
Well,
but
you know what? Look, hold on. Before we're going to go on to chapter 4, but what this means, Edward, when it says love your enemy, it means you can absolutely go to a Bruce Springsteen concert and have a great time, even though he is your political enemy. That's all it means. That's all it means.
If he'll let you in, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to act like a Jew and pretend you don't exist to get in.
Right.
Hold on. Let's start chapter 4.
4. Mordecai requests Esther's help. When Mordecai learned about all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on burlap and ashes, and went out into the city crying with a loud and bitter wail. He went as far as the gate of the palace, for no one was allowed to enter the palace gate while wearing clothes of mourning. And as news of the king's decree reached all the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews. They fasted, wept, and wailed, and many people lay in burlap and ashes. When Queen Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. She sent clothing to him to replace the burlap, but he refused it. Then Esther sent for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs who had been appointed as her attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why he was in mourning. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the square in front of the palace gate. Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews. He asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. So Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay this message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him.
All right, there we have it. Let's chat about that. Paul, just side note, we will pick up with Pastor Bill next week on chapter 5. Put that.
Yeah, 5, 6, and 7 are really important. So that's a good spot for him to jump in.
Yeah, put that in your doom scroll, your notebook, to let Pastor Bill know.
Okay.
All right, so chapter 4, boys. What'd you hear?
At first blush, that's the wife we all wanted, right?
Hmm?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, you talk about integrity, she's got it all. I mean, stout heart.
You will find there's 6 more chapters left. You will find that absolutely that's the one. That's the one you wanted.
That's the one you wanted.
Yes, but interesting. Correlations to, because I mentioned I wanted to bring this to modern day Iran, 79 Iran now, where Iran was shutting down other religions. Oh, we've never seen that before. Ukraine.
Oh, no, come on.
You weren't allowed to. You could only be Islamic or a hidden Christian or a hidden Jew. And that's what you're seeing here in Persia was the same thing that was happening at the time of Esther. And Esther, we will find out, corrects this for a period of time, but we're not there yet. But so where are we at, Paul?
So after well, it gets into the further chapters because after Mordecai and
all right, we'll save that for next Sunday if we're doing next Sunday.
Yeah, because then it's after they have all their conversations and stuff. Esther goes to the king, and Spoiler alert.
All right, we'll leave it there. Of course.
Yeah.
I thought, but any other thoughts on 4 or where we're at 1 through 4?
No, this is great. Yeah, good stuff.
One of my favorite books. It's short, great story. Really does show a lot of
And it applies today. There's so many things. You mentioned Iran. It's so funny that these cat daddies are trying to move towards Sharia law, and Iran are going the other way. They're like,
right.
Yeah, we've lived it. We're done with it.
We've done it since 1979.
We want to be like everybody else and be non-practicing recreational Muslims.
Well,
you want to go to
you guys see the video clip I sent of the hottest woman in Iran?
Hold on. What Paul said was important. You might have missed it. Non-practicing Muslims. So we're still Muslim by heritage. We're still Muslim by region. We're still Muslim by ethnicity. But we don't practice that shit. That's what I think Paul is saying. Iran wants to go back to. They want to wear bikinis on their beautiful beach.
Yep.
Right.
Just like they used to do in the 70s until 79 hit. But yes, correct.
No, the Ayatollahs are 7th century. And many Western scholars have said that the difference between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, even though they're all monotheistic, this is how they used to explain it, one God, is that Judaism and Christianity have had their Reformation, and Islam has not. And I would always submit that Islam has had its Reformation, and they're choosing the hyper-religious Islamic people are choosing the 7th century version of Islam. They absolutely are, and it's Islamic supremacy, and that's the issue.
Which is why you see countries in favor of the American empire. They are not like that anymore. Saudi Arabia,
that's right.
I can go further, but they are not. They're not practicing UAE. They don't practice.
Dubai.
Gentlemen,
they happen to just say, "Yeah, we're Islamic," but they don't go to church. They really don't give a shit about the church because they know it's bullshit. But it's also, when you say Jewish is also a religion. It's also an ethnicity. Islam is an ethnicity.
Yeah.
It is.
And you know what else is special about that whole conversation? The same thing can be said about Christianity today. Just Christians in name only anymore. Just whitewashed and watered down, messages. It's the same as the Islamic faith. The same thing. They're not practicing. They don't really believe in it. They say they do. Yeah, we're members, but yeah, we don't follow. The same thing with Christianity today. It's the same thing.
Edward, we actually like those kind of Muslims.
Well, yeah, they're those kind of Christians.
Edward, I'm going to struggle with what you said, and I'm going to have a rebuttal that the people that you hear that say we're Christians, love thy neighbor because we hate ICE, they were never Christian, and they're not Christian. If they go to church, they're going to a church that has a pastor that is a cult leader.
I agree with you. But that's not what people hear. They think that when they say that, I believe right away you're a Christian just because, you say you are and you've hung out in a church.
Yeah, but they'll also tell you there's no heaven. They're really not. They're not believers.
I agree with you. So just because they say the Christians are Islamic doesn't mean you're truly that.
Well, in other words, for those quote unquote Christians, their politics, their left-wing politics have become their religious faith. Their religious faith.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you can ask them a question. What's the difference between being a good Democrat and a good Christian? And they can't answer it. Same for secular Jews. What's the difference between being a good Jew and a good Democrat? All I've ever gotten is silence.
Nah.
Because
that's a totally different podcast, and I would totally.
I want to talk about it.
We gotta close this out. We gotta close it out. We
For
gotta
what
close
it's
it out,
worth,
everybody.
though,
See you
Hey,
for what
guys.
it's
listen,
worth,
listen.
though,
I enjoyed it.
Islam has not had a similar moment where that happened for them.
Join us next Sunday.